Article in LiveJournal, author Sibvet. The use of atmospheric electricity in the past. In the architecture of the past, spire-like structures were very often used. Spires were widely spread in the architecture of Gothic cathedrals. The official explanation reflects the general aspiration of that time to increase the height of temples. On one hand, tall spires made the cathedral more visible from afar. On the other hand, they symbolize the aspiration upwards toward God. Spires most often top the bell towers of cathedrals. But does everyone realize how complex the structure of a spire is, made and previously designed and calculated in the past? This is not like using modern materials with reinforcement. In practical terms, it's utter nonsense. Complicated, costly, and the reasons behind it are unclear. Let's watch this video. For this, you need a radio station, a 150 kilowatt transmitter, old radio jammers, and a 90-meter wire. That's all you need for unsafe experiments with receiving radio waves. Within the range of the radio waves, a huge voltage arises between the ground and the long wire. Because of the modulation of the radio signal, the arc vibrates at the frequency of the voice and starts to talk. The current in this arc can reach hundreds of amperes. From such a radio, the metal melts and drips. For such high voltage, there are no obstacles. The arc easily pierces through a 3-liter jar and wood. Some thoughts came to mind, which I will try to express. I don't know if the antenna in the video is working or transmitting, most likely not. We observe atmospheric electricity in action, with the radio station's modulated signal superimposed on it. Remember the basic circuit diagram of a crystal radio receiver without batteries? It works solely on the energy of radio waves, according to the radio electronics textbook. But it needs a large external and high antenna, as well as good grounding. As a child, I built something like this, but since there were no powerful radio stations nearby, I could only listen to the radio point of the neighboring Les Promkos. Maybe the radio station's signal is just modulating the received energy using this simple circuit? Let's move on. Is it possible that not so long ago physical principles for generating electricity or even certain principles of radio communication were actively used? Fantastic. Let's discuss the Notre-Dame Cathedral. So tell me why, just for looks? In practical terms, the building could look just as good aesthetically without the spire. I think maybe if we draw an analogy with video, spires are devices for generating electricity for lighting, for heating, for communication. Maybe they use these spires to get electricity. By using the difference in potential at different heights, they say that the difference in potential between the Earth and our nose is about 200 volts. The constant discharges and air ionization around us prevent us from getting shocked. Let me explain this further. Our planet, electrically speaking, is like a spherical capacitor charged to about 300,000 volts. The Earth's surface is negatively charged, while the ionosphere is positively charged, with the atmosphere acting as an insulator between them. Through the atmosphere, there is a constant flow of ionic and convective leakage currents from the capacitor, which reaches many thousands of amperes. But despite this, the potential difference between the plates of the capacitor does not decrease. This means that there is a generator in nature that constantly replenishes the leakage of charges from the plates of the capacitor. Such a generator is the Earth's magnetic field, which rotates together with our planet in the flow of the solar wind. Connecting to the negative pole of the Earth is very simple. For this, it is enough to make a reliable grounding. Connecting to the positive pole of the generator and the ionosphere is a complex technical task. As in any other, there is an electric field in our global capacitor. The intensity of this field is distributed very unevenly. Vertically, it is maximum at the Earth's surface and is about 150 volts per meter with altitude. It decreases approximately according to the exponential law, and at an altitude of 10 kilometers, it is about 3% of the value at the Earth's surface. As you can see, the idea of generating electrical energy using the potential difference at different altitudes does exist. Nature itself regularly reminds us of this when we see lightning and hear thunder. This is the breakdown of the atmospheric air dielectric. Moreover, we know little about atmospheric electricity. Sprites were discovered only a few decades ago. Here is one of the attempts to harness atmospheric electricity. The overall charge of the system is neutral. However, the highest electric field intensity is concentrated at the tip of the conductor. This setup requires a transformer, the Tesla coil, to conduct electrons into the atmosphere. If excess electrons are directed into the atmosphere using corona discharges, a plasma arc, or something else plasma-based, the electrons will leave the surface of the conductor and transfer into the atmosphere through the air. Even more simply, with a corona discharge. At the top of this pole, we connect the capacitor plates into a plasma arc, the very conductor that can connect the negatively charged metal of the grounded conductor with the positively charged atmosphere. A real-life example is lightning striking a lightning rod. Power station poles with Tesla generators on top, reaching hundreds of meters high, look futuristic, technological, technocratic, and canonical. We can see this in the design of Spires. These little needles are designed for ion deposition or ion wind. Right now we're just playing with this, without fully understanding how it works, or how it can truly be used. Regarding the use of all this in temples and churches, do you see the vertical iron bars going up to the dome? What is this? Grounding, lightning protection, why? Several bars, and why do they go inside the walls? This is clearly not reinforcement or tying the church walls together. Here the bars go vertically along the walls, a Faraday cage for the parishioners, shielding, steel ties and grids in churches. Could these bars be part of a device that generates electricity? Perhaps it also functioned as a means of communication. If so, with whom? Maybe the gods and the creator broadcast on certain frequencies, but we can't hear their voices because we don't know how to modulate the signal. It may be neither amplitude, phase, nor phase amplitude modulation. And the ancient temple keepers knew the principle and perhaps had this device, the altar, the ark, and so on. Well, just guesses. But now only the symbolism and the cult remain. Previously, all of this had meaning and functionality. Another thought about the use of atmospheric electricity. What if temples served as healers? It is known that if cell membranes have a strong negative charge, then no virus will be able to penetrate inside, even if it attaches itself to the cell. Inside the temples, the body's polarization was being restored. A person is made up almost entirely of water, and their water was transformed into living water, acquiring a negative redox potential. The erythrocytes would separate, metabolism would improve, and so on. And now this is called bliss. Physics, yes, biochemistry, and there's no mysticism or religious fanaticism involved. Pillars. Could it be that the pillars in the squares worked on the same principle as the spires? And now it's symbolism and a tribute to Moga. Looking at this, the mind tries to grasp the unseen meaning in all of it. A building with columns in a semicircle, and in the center a stele, that is an electrode. Information about Nikola Tesla comes to mind, about the names of hundreds of scientists from the 19th and 20th centuries who studied the ether. Maybe they were just trying to rediscover ways of obtaining free electricity? Everything was known long before science turned to the theories of relativity, modern electrodynamics, and electrostatics. Here's another example from modern times. You know what? At electrical substations, various electrical devices are used to combat resonance that occurs in power transmission lines. This area of electrical circuit operation in resonance modes is generally not studied except by enthusiasts. This is the basis of Nikola Tesla's idea of extracting electricity from the air. The energy around us is limitless. We just need to find a way to take the necessary part for ourselves with simple devices. But our world is immersed in energy monopolies, building nuclear, hydro and thermal power plants, and people are led to believe that energy can only come from these types of sources. And our ancestors are probably laughing at us. Comment below, I read it, I remembered. As a child, our summer house neighbor Grandpa provided wireless electricity to the house. It all functioned. The chairman kept calling the police on him with commissions, claiming that he was secretly stealing electricity. They would come, find nothing illegal, and when asked where it came from, he would answer, "From the atmosphere." They would twirl a finger at their temple and leave. Commentary by Dimitri John. What was once standard physics curriculum for a generation of students now seems like nonsense or science fiction to many people today. Probably everyone knows how to make a water heater out of 2 razor blades, an eraser, some thread, and a piece of wire. And during World War II, prisoners of war made so-called trench radios out of pencil lead, a razor blade, an electromagnet coil, and a piece of wire. And headphones out of nails, fabric, and wax. Commentary by Vadukan 8. Are we living in a late post-apocalyptic world or in an early pre-apocalyptic world? Whew, I said it all without getting confused. Apparently, we don't have to wait much longer. We'll find out soon. Here we are, just tossing around such mysteries of the world. 30 or 40 years ago, expressing these views would have landed us in a mental hospital, but now it's unremarkable. What changed? Comment. In the Celtic regions of Ireland, Britain and northern France, there are many towers. See the link for more information. Ireland is home to 65 of these structures, averaging 34 meters in height. Their purpose remains unknown. I've read a theory that they somehow have a positive effect on the harvest. I had to travel from Moscow to Yaroslavl once. In the next car there was a man about 50 years old, and I happened to strike up a conversation with him about electrical engineering, specifically about whether it's possible to get an increase in electrical power in a circuit from nowhere. And then Uncle Kolya told me something interesting. It turns out he works as a winding electrician at some factory in Kostroma. He and his colleagues made a clever power transformer to supply the machines in the workshop. And here's the point. The primary winding was wound with a white copper strip across the entire width of the core window. In fact, not even a strip, but a copper sheet in several turns. And the secondary winding was made with a regular copper bus bar, that is, a wire. Taking into account the need to get 380 to 400 volts, direct current from a rectifier was supplied to the primary, winding through a car ignition interrupter, a distributor. With sharp pulses, a discharge of a mysterious substance like a gas or liquid occurred from the copper strip. You could feel it with your hands. The winding would sting your palms if you brought them close. Among themselves, they called it the iron or blue flame. And from the secondary winding, a tremendous amount of power was drawn, more than enough to supply 4 lathes. Management soon discovered the issue. The employees were reprimanded and the transformer was hastily dismantled. Many were deprived of their bonuses as if for engaging in topics unrelated to their work during working hours. They were threatened with dismissal. All this happened back in the distant year of 1972. Comment by Evgen Is. After reading the post, I understand that you are absolutely right. Indeed, with this difference in potential, you can both destroy an enemy, light up temples, and exchange information. And these technologies are not lost, but most likely are just being kept under wraps. But what would happen if they were restored now? I, along with those notorious 95% everyone has heard about, will each climb onto our own couch, bury ourselves in our iPhones, and only get up for digestion and reproduction. And only the remaining 5% will continue to sow grain, work at the machines, run the country, and so on. When humanity matures to that level of awareness, then every home will have a free power outlet, and paradise will come to Earth and Israel. Part 2. From official history, everyone knows that there was no large-scale use of electricity until the end of the 19th century. There were studies, amateur and academic developments even in the 18th century, but that was just preparation for the energy revolution that happened later. In the first part of this topic, I touched on a possible error in these ideas about our past. Let's continue exploring the use of atmospheric electricity. Here in the painting, those are clearly not Islamic religious symbols on the tower. So what are they? Lightning antennas from water inside one of the temples in Cairo, somewhere between 1848 and 1852. Do you see the metal structure on top of the stupa? Do you think it's just decoration? And these are not isolated cases. Here's an example from our buildings. Pay attention to the frame of the bell tower dome. But why is it made of metal and covered with gold? That's a separate question. There are also beams going inside from it. In my opinion, churches create grace in an electric field. People feel different there. Sometimes they even recover after praying, and this is presented as the descent of the Holy Spirit. No, a positive message is also good, but it makes sense for us to study this mechanism. About Vladimir and Dmitry Yan, they suggested that this tower is an electric separator, creating static electricity in the field of which, for example, seeds of different sizes are separated by fractions. More details about the construction can be found at this link. Many such towers were sketched. I don't think this is just a proper cargo cult even now. Maybe they're just out of order at the moment. About Vladimir Pagoda, there's an electric separator and it does this sorting. Now let's move on to the generators. In the east, there are prayer wheels like these, and there are also ones like this. Some people have set them up so that they're turned by the wind or by the flow of water. You have to admit, it really resembles a cargo cult. The natives once saw the remains or even functioning installations. They couldn't understand the meaning, but imitation worked. How is that not like a dynamo machine? There are some clues of technological advancement of past civilizations on our territory in Russia. This is the Tobolsk Kremlin. On the slope of this hill, there is a building with 2 arches at its base. On the other side, there are such tall walls leading up to it, and there are many grooves on them. Such a number of grounding conductors is clearly excessive, so why are there so many of them? People walk by without understanding what it is. The Tobolsk complex is also a place of anomalous natural phenomena. The thing is, the mountain it was built on is called Altik Aginak, which translates from Tatar as throwing out golden sparks. In an old Congo chronicle, there are notes describing how local residents saw pillars of fire on the sacred mountain, shooting light into the sky. There are also Russian historical documents describing these phenomena. The Kelvin water dropper is an electrostatic voltage generator. This extremely simple device can produce an electric voltage of about 10 kilovolts. The device consists of a pair of metal cans, each of which is connected to a metal tube suspended above the other can, from the holes of which water drips. What if there was a spring with a high enough flow rate on this flat mountain? Our clever ancestors adapted this stream of water to generate a sufficiently high voltage on Leyden jar capacitors, which would sometimes discharge through a spark gap when electricity wasn't needed. That's precisely why outside observers noticed sparks on the mountain, though another explanation is possible. This stream of water wasn't that weak and set an electrophorus machine in motion. It doesn't require much force to turn, it doesn't produce back electromotive force like modern electric generators. But later this was destroyed and forgotten. An option for using the columns, generating electricity and using it to light a public execution site through gas discharge lamps. Has anyone ever wondered how such illuminations were created before the official use of electricity and, even more so, lighting? The Peter and Paul fortress in lighting lamps? A link about the Mach lights or what Tesla repeated. Is this the kind of lighting that was used in old times? Here are illustrations from the magazine Всемирная Иллюстрация, a Russian weekly illustrated publication of a moderate bourgeois liberal orientation. An art and literary magazine, one of the most popular among illustrated publications in Russia in the second half of the century. A book published by German Gope. From 1869 to 1898, the circulation reached up to 10,000 copies. It was the year 1883. It was only in December 1888 that the Georgievskaya power plant produced its first electricity. Illumination in Moscow. Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, that is our everything, had the good fortune to create during a time when the electric generator was already in full swing. It's unclear if this thing worked, but it ended up in operation, in a serious study from 1900. The electromagnetic generator, as we can see, has no external wires, no Leyden jars, just a bunch of magnets. An illustration from the year 1880, lighting from a ship. An illustration from the year 1871, a spotlight shining into the sky. This is all still before the invention of electricity. A photo from the year 1896, illumination at the coronation in Moscow. This is what made it possible, a thermoelectric generator. If you don't know what that is, you better get back to school. A regular electric generator and electric motor in 1871. Let's look at the chandelier in the Hermitage. Let's say we replace the candles and look at the result of our upgrade. In an hour at most, the ceiling will turn grey from the soot. How did this lamp shine? Put the lampshade facing down, stick a gas discharge lamp in there, and there are no questions. That's why all the ceilings are so beautiful. The generation of a standing sound wave was carried out in chapels or semicircular apses, which have zero significance for religious worship, yet are present everywhere in the architecture of Catholicism, Orthodoxy, and even Islam. I should note that for infrasound, which is inaudible to humans, the resonating dimensions of the temple's elements need to be at least 7 meters to achieve 25 Hz or more. The lower the frequency, the larger the temple. The similarities between the structures, assemblies, and magnetrons were also written about by originally from Tiflis. The holy fire descends in a small church built inside the huge church of the Holy Sepulchre. The structure of this and other churches is similar to a magnetron, which is used in a microwave oven, which allows us to assume a technological origin of the holy fire, remnants of technology that was widely used in the past. There's your answer.